Okay, the world clock tells me it's 7:05. So 7:05 we get started, just like an old baseball game. That first pitch is at 7:05. So we want to thank you all for being here this evening, and thank you for joining us. A whole new ball game is our topic tonight, and we're so honored to be joined by three of the great alumni in the sports field: Matt Thomas, Robert Flores, and Bill Worrell. And what I'm going to do this evening is introduce each one of them one at a time. But first, I want to give you a few housekeeping items about how our webinar is going to work tonight. Quick reminder, make sure you are on mute so that we can't hear if the dog barks or the delivery person knocks on your front door. It has happened, so please try and be on mute, unless, of course, you're one of our hosts, and we'll, of course, want to hear from you. Second off, if you want to see the speaker in full screen in the top right corner, or if you're using your phone, it could be different, but in the top right corner, you can click on Speaker View, and that way, whoever the main speaker is, that will be the only person that you see in the middle of your screen. Questions. You may ask questions along the way. You can put those in our chat feature, which you will see along the bottom of your screen. If you click on chat, your chat room will come up on the right-hand side. You can enter your question there as we go for any one of our guests here today. I will try and see those. They're a bit of a squirrel, so you see a question and you turn your head, so we'll try and make sure we keep everybody on the rails. But if you would like to ask a question, they are encouraged, especially in the second part of our program today in our chat feature. We will have some open question and answer time at the end, and we'll certainly entertain your questions from all of our Cougar fans and sports fans from around Houston and a few from around the country. And also we have two more webinars on our schedule coming up that have been scheduled. We actually have 8 that we're about to announce, but we have 2 more that are coming up. We have one on June 23rd, which is called Charting Your Career Path. That is with our career services folks and some of our small business and staffing experts that are alums, and that'll be on the lunchtime of June 23rd. And then we have one that we're working with our Energy Advisory Board that is called the Energy Workforce During COVID-19, and that is on Thursday, June 25th. So we have a couple of those coming up. And to give you a little peek into the future, we have one about summer entertaining and cocktail making in July. And then we have one with our new College of Medicine also in August about how to send your kids back to school in this COVID era. So we've got these webinars under our new UH2U series, and we're so glad you're with us here tonight. So this should be fun. We have 3 of the most fun people that I know. If we're going to have a conversation for an hour, we might as well have some great fun folks here, and we've got 3 of the best. So I want to introduce them to you as a group, and then we'll have each one will talk on a topic one at a time. So first off, Matt Thomas, host of the Matt Thomas Show and Sports Talk 790, is a 98 graduate of the University of Houston. He is currently does play-by-play for the Houston Rockets, road games and home games. He's also, as I mentioned, a 98 graduate, has also worked in the college realm at the University of Houston and at Rice University, and is one of our fine alums. Second up is Robert Flores, currently studio host for the MLB Network and the NHL Network. Has also hosted ESPN SportsCenter in the past and has done ABC's college football studio updates, and is also a radio and TV graduate. And last but certainly not least, the granddaddy of them all, as we'll say in the sports, Bill Worrell, class of 1969, a familiar face in the Houston market, 40 years in this market, and he has touched every sports franchise in the city, I think at least one time, and he will be speaking on basketball here today. So I want to bring in each one of those just to say hello. Gentlemen, if you'll unmute, I want to give you a chance just to say hello, Matt and Robert and Bill. Why don't we say hello to Matt first? Did we lose Matt? Where's Matt?
I'm right here. You hear me okay?
Hi, Matt Thomas. How are you?
I'm really bored. I took some time off because I was just tired of talking about when sports are coming back. So the last 3 days have been nice. I might have gone to Louisiana. I might have given the state economy some money, but I'm here, happy to visit with my fellow Cougars, and desperately waiting for the sports to return. It sounds like one sport is definitely coming back. One may or may not, and the other one is still very much up in the air in terms of whether we do in the fall. But yeah, it's good to be talking sports and hopefully talking about some games very soon.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. You are you're the baby in the group, 98 grad. It's still, by the way, 2 decades ago, but you're still the baby in the group. So thank you.
That's actually not true.
It's not?
No.
Are you the grad year baby in the group? Are you Is Robert younger than you? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I graduated in 1990 from high school, and I took the 8-year plan to graduate because I was working full-time in radio and going to school part-time. So
Yeah.
I was going 9 hours at a time. And finally in 1998, I got the blessing and just prayed for a degree, and I got one. So yeah, it was a long work in progress. Lots of parking tickets on campus, that's for sure.
Our friend Robert Wool would say you went 1 year too long because they asked you to leave at 7. So you must have done something. So thank you for being here. Robert Flores, how are things in the great Northeast? And thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Things are, slowly getting, I don't want to say back to normal, but I will say that things are opening up in New Jersey, where I'm at. And of course, New York, New Jersey, that's really was the epicenter. And I think the numbers have been trending in a more positive direction. So I think some restrictions are starting to be lifted, which is good news. As far as, sports coming back, we're hoping that Major League Baseball players and the owners can come to an agreement very, very soon. And I know as far as the state of Texas, the governor there has said that that games can be played in front of fans. So there's a lot of still some things to be worked out and ironed out, but hopefully we can get back to playing. And I graduated from Dobie High School in '88, and I was done in '92. So Matt is still considered the baby.
Don't rub it in. That's horrible. You went in 4 years. Oh, I'm jealous.
Oh, we have a chance. We're going to ask Bill Worrell. I don't think we'll get into his academic background, but Bill, thank you for being here. Make sure you unmute yourself. And we do have one of these webinar games where the number of times you have to donate $1 to the scholarship fund for every time we have to say it. Don't forget to unmute. But Bill, thank you for being here. I don't know, are you in the clubhouse at Brayburn? Did you just finish and you're in? But we appreciate you joining us, my friend. You're a friendly face. We're glad to see you.
Good to be here with you. It was too hot to play golf today.
I rode my bike today, and I think it was too hot to ride my bike, and I hit a stone.
Let me check. When did Robert Flores graduate from high school?
88.
You said 1988?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness. Try 1962, so y'all can just you can forget about that.
Well, look, at the risk of embarrassing you, Bill, it's an honor for me to be on this with you, because I grew up, watching you on Channel 2, the late great Bob Allen on Channel 13, and then there was who was over at 11?
Ron Franklin.
Yeah, Ron Franklin was there. Yes. And so it is. I mean, you guys were really one of my inspirations for getting into this business. So it's really cool when they said that you were going to be a part of it. I was thrilled.
Well, you're very kind, because I followed your career, and I'm very proud of you. You've done a wonderful job, and I watch quite often because I'm not sure we're going to have baseball. So I'm curious to hear what you've got to report over the next few weeks.
And we are going to talk about exactly that. So our format's going to be, I'm going to kind of ask general questions in the football, basketball, and baseball areas, and then we're going to take your questions as we go along, folks. So be sure and add it. And I want to also thank, he's not part of our program today, but I see Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle is joining us, and I know one of the voices of the Houston Cougars, Ted Pardee, is joining us as well. And it's best that Ted is not on video. Those of you who know Ted, his name is just perfect. He's got a face for radio, so we'll leave him with his name there. That'd be perfect. And we do have a special guest coming, a surprise guest that I'll let you all know when that person arrives. So Matt, we're going to start with you. And I've kind of got you in the football space, which actually has been the least affected sport to this point, like if you don't count the XFL.
Right.
What do you think is the forecast for football that you're hearing from the Texans situation, and what we might be looking at in college football in the fall?
Well, I think the NFL road to starting up is a lot smoother. I think we saw that with the draft. Roger Goodell didn't waste any time in telling the teams, stop complaining about not being able to talk to these guys. You're going to have to Zoom meet. You're going to have to trust your scouting department what you saw last year. We're going to move along with the draft, and they did that on schedule, and it was very successful, very highly rated. A lot of people watched. We were all looking for something to watch. The schedule came out shortly after that, and everything on the schedule says we're going to play football in September. Now, they've changed rookie mini camps and off-season training activities, and training camps are not going to be able to travel. The Dallas Cowboys usually go to California. I think New Orleans in the past has gone to Wisconsin or West Virginia. The Texans have gone in there too. That's out. Everybody's going to practice at their home facilities. But it sounds like to me that everything is going according to plan for the NFL to start right on time, which would be in September. There's a caveat of maybe moving things back a few weeks if they need to. I think the biggest question mark, Mike, and to the audience is how many fans and if will be in these stadiums. Can you put 15, 20, 25,000 people in stadiums? Will some states allow more fans than others? I think Governor Abbott's already said we can have 50% in open-air stadiums this season in all college and pro. So that has a huge factor, I think, for the Texans, Cowboys, and for the collegiate team. So that might be a little bit of an advantage that the schools in our state have as compared to other places that aren't willing to open up. I think college is a little trickier. Frankly, if you're LSU or Auburn or Georgia or Notre Dame and you're drawing, 85, 90,000 people, you need those people, as many of them in the stands as possible, because that's how it drives the revenue for your particular school. Some other schools may not have to worry as much about attendance because if their facilities are just not drawing as many people as I just said, and maybe they don't have a big enough stadium or they just don't have that kind of fan base. But I'm very curious about colleges because there are going to be some schools that are going to still go viral and do virtual learning while they'll have some people on campus. And I think there's been a lot of schools around the country that have said, we're not going to have live athletic events if we don't have live students on our campus. So there is the big question mark is how does college handle this? The bottom line is, gentlemen, the calendar is going to start stipulating that these kids get to campus pretty soon for fall camp. And so there's going to be some pretty big decisions to be made. I'll be curious of the 100-plus schools that play Division I-A football, how many of them are going to play a full 12-game schedule? Will there be rescheduled games? Will you pare down the conferences? And will this be any sort of a potential where this pandemic has maybe taken the Power 5 conferences and make them create their own league, which I hope isn't the case because I like college football the way that it is. But it scares me that there is still so much uncertainty about college football right now because I think a lot of campuses are still trying to figure out when students can be there and when to bring 120 college football athletes and volleyball players and whatever onto a campus, make sure they don't contract the virus. And, oh, by the way, at the same time, get ready for a college football season.
So Matt, can I ask a fun question that you may have discussed on your program and maybe you have not, but will this make the Texans open the roof?
Well, here's the
for
thing.
It to be an open air stadium? Will that?
There's a lot of people that believe the roof's damaged.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that could be a wives' tale, but there have been too many awesome nights or day games in September and October, maybe not September, but in October, November, where the temperatures are like 73 degrees at kickoff, and there's been no practical reason why. So
I just know from an open air situation, would they almost have to open it? I don't think they would. But
I don't think it's and again, I haven't gotten clarification on this. I don't think it's literally open air. Like you can't play a game at Minute Maid Park with fans unless the roof's open. I think they're saying, generally speaking, stadiums, but that has still to be clarified. But yeah, there's something about that roof that either it's broken, which if it's broken, let's fix it because we built the stadium with the roof for it to be open occasionally. Either that or the Texans are really stingy about never having the roof open under any circumstance.
All right. Well, so I want to go to basketball next. So, Bill, you're going to be next only because our special surprise guest has joined us. I don't know if you can see on the screen. Retired number 10 Houston Cougar Otis Birdsong is joining us on the he's filling the gap. Otis, be sure to unmute your phone.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
We had our special guest, Otis. Where are you joining us from today, Mr. Birdsong?
Beautiful, sunny Los Angeles, California.
That's better than Arkansas.
I worked my first college basketball game ever on the radio, Cougars versus James Madison with Otis Birdsong. He treated me very well many, many, many years ago.
Well, I called Otis a few minutes ago and asked him to be our surprise guest. And so, Bill and Bill's seen a few Otis Birdsong games in the day and could watch him play a little bit. So, Otis, thank you so much for joining us. And you can be in on the conversation with Bill here in a second. So, Bill, the Rockets and the NBA are talking about, playing again all in one place. Kind of give us where you sit. What does that mean for a fan out there waiting to see NBA basketball?
Well, they're going to have to wait a little while longer. The clubs are going to work out individually at their own arenas and their own practice facilities. So the Rockets have already gathered back into Houston, but they can only work out right now the way the rules are. They can only have 4 on the court at one time. And as most all of us know, if we're in sports, it takes 5 to play basketball and 10 if you want an opponent. So right now what they're doing is they're working out in different sections of the building, and they will work out on their own, and they look great. They're all in great shape. They're ready to go. The main thing is about basketball, the superstars want to play. And the good thing about the NBA is that it's 50-50. The players have as much voice in what goes on in the National Basketball Association as the owners. And that's really a good thing because they get together, they work together, and they've already decided that that's the way it's going to be. They're going to meet out in Orlando, and they have 3 practice facilities out at the ESPN lot, basketball, and they're going to play games all day long, and they're going to play 8 games, regular season, or finish up your final 8 games, and then move right into the playoffs.
Wow. And so, Otis, you've been involved or have been involved in the past in the NBA alumni group, former players group. How much work did it take to get the NBA to a 50-50 situation from when you played to where it is now? Give us a little insight into how that came about.
Well, it was very hard. The owners like to hold on to that money, Mike. and the players like to make money. But that's why you have collective bargaining agreements. And I think because so much money is being made now in the league, that the owners realize that it's not hard to share the pot. It's enough to go around. Everybody's making so much money now. And so it's easier for them to come to the table. Back when I was in the league was struggling. They didn't have the huge TV contracts. In fact, I was the 2nd pick in the draft, and my shoe contract was for $1,000 for the entire year. So it's so much money being made now. The owners, they don't have a problem sharing the money.
Wow. $1,000 for a shoe contract. Can you imagine? That's what a pair of shoes costs $1,000 now, I think.
Converse All-Stars, baby.
Well, Bill, we're still on basketball, and I told Otis we'd only keep him for a few minutes in California. Do you have a favorite Otis Birdsong story from watching him play at some point? I know I'm tricking you with this question. We didn't talk about it before, but the University of Houston, you hear about Akeem and you hear about Clyde and you hear about Elvin, but there are a few people like Don Chaney and Otis Birdsong that don't quite get their due. Give us an Otis Birdsong sense. Let's embarrass him a little bit about. He's a 12-year veteran and a 4-time All-Star, and he's in 3 Hall of Fames. And my goodness, he's got his number retired. He must have done something right.
Well, he did a lot of things right. It's funny that you should mention Don Chaney and my man up there because they're my 2 favorite players. And Otis Birdsong was one of those guys that when you met him as a young guy, when he first came on campus, he had a certain thing about him, the way he treated people off the court, the way he played on the court. But Otis had this certain amount of class about him when he played basketball. He kind of flowed. He didn't run real fast like everybody else. Everybody else was going and huffing and puffing and trying to get down the other end of the court. And here was Otis just gliding down there, and he'd go inside and lay it up. He had great inside game and outside game. But I think the best memory I have of Otis was in Hoffein's Pavilion, the last play-in game for the National Invitational Tournament in Madison Square Garden. And that year, Otis squared off with another guy named Bird, Larry Bird of Indiana State. And a lot of people don't remember that game, but I think it was one of the great games in University of Houston history because Otis made the basket to give the Cougars the lead with a few seconds left in the game. Indiana State got the basketball. They got the final shot. They got it to Bird on the baseline. He had about an 8 to 7 footer from the baseline, and Otis was defending him. And Larry Bird says to this day that Otis fouled him, and that's why the ball didn't go in. But Otis and I saw the replays, and we know that Otis didn't foul it. Right, Otis? You and I are sticking to that story, although it was close, I'll have to admit.
Bill, I'm so glad you mentioned that story. My 12th year, I finished with the Boston Celtics. Larry and I had the same agent, Bob Wolf. So I would see Larry in the summertime on Cape Cod. So when I signed with the Celtics, Larry comes up to me. He said, "Welcome to Boston. We really look forward to you being here." And he says, "You know you effing fouled me on that play, don't you?" I'm like, "Larry, it's 12 years ago. 12 years ago, you're talking about I fouled you?" But I really did. I nicked his elbow a little bit, and it caused the shot to be short because Larry's 6'9", I'm 6'4". And so I nicked his elbow, but they were not going to call a foul in Hofheinz Pavilion. No way.
I told you not to admit it.
I had to admit it. I had to rub it in. I said, "Yeah, I fouled you, but we still won."
The first time I interviewed him, before and after that game, and then again when he played against the Rockets in 1980 as a rookie. Remember, he played in the finals against the Houston Rockets. And every time I would see Larry, I would say, "Man, do you remember that game in Hofheinz Pavilion, Larry, when Otis Birdsong and the Cougars beat you guys by 2 points?" And finally, when we got into the 90s, every time Bird would see me coming, he'd just turn and go the other way. He said, "Worrell, I don't want to hear the story one more time." Wow. He was a great guy. He took it like a champ finally.
Well, I will, and I know I will tell you what a great guy Otis Birdsong is. I was thinking about having a surprise that nobody else knew about, including my own team, and I called Otis out of the blue 1 hour ago, and asked him to be on this call, and here's Otis Birdsong right here. So that tells you what a great Cougar he is, and what a now he's in LA time, so he's probably getting ready to go back to the beach. You've probably pulled him in off the beach, but
getting ready to eat.
Go ahead. So
hey, we can do that good now too.
Thank you so much, number 10, for sneaking in here and saying hello.
Thank you guys.
One of the great Cougars.
Baby.
Thank you for being a great surprise for us, my friend. Say hello to Deborah for me. Okay, thank you.
You too.
One of the great Cougars and one of the great guys, just generally overall. So thank you, Bill, for the basketball update. Okay, Robert, the one that seems to be having the most trouble getting across the finish line.
Yeah.
Major League Baseball. So give us a little insight into what you're hearing now. I'm hearing 120 games, 78 games. Give us a little something.
The commissioner, Rob Manfred, was on, tonight is the draft on MLB Network and for Major League Baseball. And he said on MLB Network, basically, I can guarantee that there's going to be baseball played in 2020. He did not say how many games. He did not get into specifics. And what I think he's referring to is that he does have the ability, per an agreement that the players and owners came to in March, where if after quote unquote good faith negotiations did not come up with an agreement, he can mandate a schedule. Okay, we're going to play and it's going to be X amount of games. So I think that all fans would hope that an agreement happens before the commissioner has to kind of put that hammer down. Clearly, everyone is. I am surprised. Let me couch. I have to be careful for what I say. I am surprised that it has taken this long. I still have hope. I know that they're still talking. I still believe that there will be an agreement, and I am hoping that it does not come to the commissioner having to unilaterally just say, all right, we can't come up with an agreement. I'll make up the plan here myself. So it is, like I said, it is a good sign that they're talking, but I am surprised that that we sit, what is it, June 10th, and we still don't have an agreement. But on the bright side, the more they talk, the more that they exchange proposals and ideas, I think that that's a good thing.
How about just this is not a hockey town, although it should be.
Yeah.
How about the NHL? Are they going to play some games and finish, or have they kind of decided it's not going to happen?
No, I believe that they do have an agreement. They do have a plan that has been agreed to. So that plan is going to be set in motion. Off the top of my head, I don't know the particulars. I know that not every team that started the season is going to be involved, similar to what the NBA is planning right now. But it appears that the players and owners for the NHL have their ducks in a row, that they have a plan, and they're ready to move forward, which is definitely, I think that's a wonderful opportunity for the NHL to kind of showcase their game in a whole new way, in a whole new format, similar to what the NBA is going to do. So when you look at those two particular sports, those two leagues returning, I'm really excited because I just want to see what it's going to look like, what it's going to be like. So I think while no one could have imagined a scenario like this, I think it's a real opportunity for all leagues to kind of showcase their sport in a whole new way, maybe implement some new rules, try some different things, and take advantage of what is just a horrific situation.
So thank you so much for that. So we've introduced our guys. Now's our Q&A portion. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can go ahead and enter it in the chat, and I'll read them. Or if we feel like we'll open up the microphones, we'll let you ask them. So Robert, you got the first question.
Yeah.
How do you think opposing teams and fans will receive the Astros once the baseball season starts?
Bridget, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think that because of the current conditions and the situation, I feel like the Astros dodged a bullet here a little bit. I think, well, one, if you return and there's not going to be any fans, then that takes a large part of what the fan reaction will be. That question has been answered with, well, there's not going to be any fans. The other component is I think that because we find ourselves in such an unusual situation, because so much time has passed, that it's almost, I don't want to say forgotten, but it's not going to be on the forefront of every fan for sure. Now, will their opponents continue to harbor some ill will? I mean, that's certainly a reasonable expectation. How that plays out, I don't know.
Right. Matt, I'll throw it to you in that same kind of question. What is the vibe on sports talk radio in that space right now?
Well, if you ask the city of Houston, they don't care what America thinks about the Astros. So needless to say, it's go Astros. Let's go back to the World Series and let's win a home game in 2020. Collectively, America is going to destroy them. And I hate to use that word, but that's just what it's going to be. It is going to be ruthless, and I don't know how long it's going to be. It may be several years. The easiest thing the Astros can do, and maybe this won't happen in 2020 because of how the schedule is and what kind of season we're going to have and what kind of fan base, but to win it in 2021, 2022, sometime when this collective group is together still, and say, yeah, we didn't need to do what we did in 2017 to win the whole damn thing. So to go along with it, I think they're going to be crucified for a long period of time. Social media destroys them almost every single day. And once we get full fan bases back in stadiums, it is going to be your torture. But you know what? They're grown men. They can handle it. And it'll be just nice to have people booing and talking about a game as compared to try to anticipate a schedule. Right.
Robert, you have one other question from Bridget, who's following up. or actually from Daniel, who's following up that question, said, people are overlooking the Red Sox who got caught. And, their punishment was weak, and is everybody overlooking that? Is there any validity to that in the league?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel brings up a very good point. And I was on I did an interview earlier. This was before things got shut down, where the question, the Red Sox question, I mean, they are repeat offenders. The Red Sox are repeat offenders. So I think that once things have been ironed out as far as other questions, I think the question of why the Red Sox didn't feel or didn't have the kind of punishment that the Astros did, considering they were repeat offenders, I think that is a fair question that that could be posed to Commissioner Manfred or anyone else involved in that investigation. That is a fair question to ask. However, multiple things can be true. And while the Red Sox can be considered repeat offenders, what the Astros did, what they were found to have been guilty of, was far more elaborate, far more extensive, and dare I say, they were a little bit more arrogant than the Boston Red Sox. So while that is a very, very valid question that Daniel brings up, to say that the Red Sox and the Astros are exactly the same and what they did, that I can't get on board with.
I would agree with that 100%. I'm sure Mr. Worrell would agree with me on this as well. The MLB folks also had somebody on their side providing plenty of information. It was somebody inside the Astros clubhouse, and Mike Fiers. That, to me, is the biggest difference. The Red Sox were profoundly silent during their whole investigation.
Right. So, Bill, we're going to take some of these questions out of order. One of the questions I had on my list just got asked by Mr. Ted Pardee. Of all of you, what was your favorite UH? I was going to ask two questions. What was your favorite UH football game? And you've seen, I don't want to say this, probably the most of anybody here, but what was your favorite one that you recall? And maybe it's one that's a little not so obvious.
Thank you for saying that. It doesn't go back to the leather helmet days, Mike, but I will bring up one that I think most of our viewers haven't heard of. When I was a student out on campus in 1967, U of H traveled up to Michigan to take on Michigan State. Now, Michigan State, Bill Yeoman had been the #1 assistant, the offensive coordinator for Duffy Daugherty. So Duffy did Bill a favor when Bill came down to the U of H and said, I will schedule you for a game in 4 or 5 years. Well, little did Duffy know that he gave Bill 4 or 5 years to get the Cougars up and rolling. And they went in there. Michigan State was picked #1 in the nation. They'd come off that tie with Notre Dame the year before. The Cougars had Warren McVay. They had really a great team that people didn't know anything about. Rich Stoddard was playing guard. And in that game, the Cougars beat them 34-6. And it was one of the greatest upsets in college football up to that point. McVay ran wild. Kenny Hebert caught a bunch of passes for touchdowns. It was the defense completely shut down Michigan State. And when we got back home, we landed in Old Hobby Airport, and the pilot said, we're going to have to taxi another way because there are over 5,000 people who have jammed into this airport trying to get in here for and we couldn't believe it. 5,000 people at the airport to greet the Cougars coming back. And it took an hour and a half to get off the plane, get through the crowd. People had parked on the Esplanade all the way down to the Gulf Freeway. I mean, it was an incredible sight. And it was the first big win for the University of Houston. And of course, the Nebraska Cotton Bowl win. Cougars beating Baylor in '76. They also beat Texas in Austin, beat Texas Tech to go to the Cotton Bowl, to win the Southwest Conference Championship. Those are all great memories.
Robert, do you have one? I'll ask Matt the same questions too.
Any time that I think, well, I can't remember the year. It may have been '89. It may have been Andre's Heisman Trophy season, where they went to Austin and just that to this day is my favorite game, because the Longhorns were so helpless. They could not stop the run and shoot. Just seeing Andre throwing to all those receivers going up and down. And of course, Andre, tells the story that he wanted to go to the University of Texas. And I think Texas said, well, you can come, but you'll play defensive back or something like that. So to have that performance against the school that basically just, set him aside, that to this day is one of my favorite games.
But we might take Ted Pardee off of mute, and we can say 66-15 together.
There you go, Ted. There you go.
Let's go, baby. 66-15, and it was a lot of fun. I'm telling you, baby. You don't want to go watch it on YouTube if you haven't. It's awesome.
The band left at halftime, if you recall, the marching band.
Hey, Ted, didn't Houston then beat them pretty badly the following year in the Dome?
We did. We put it on them. Yeah, we put another 60 on them. So 3 years in a row, we put 60 on Texas. And man, I mean, that was just what we did back then, right?
I love it.
It's likely one of the reasons that they wanted out of the Southwest Conference.
and don't want us in the conference with them.
That's right.
MT, do you have a favorite Cougar game you'd like to fire off?
Yeah, you said off the radar a little bit, so I'll give you one. I was 24 years old, and I was doing the play-by-play for the University of Houston, my first major college play-by-play, and they said, you're going to work with Bill Yeoman. Anybody that listened to Coach, he was a great coach. As a broadcaster, he just wanted to yell for 3.5 hours. So he would scream, stay in your lane. We had to mute him because he was just screaming like a coach. But the second to last game we had in that first season, me calling play-by-play, was Southern Miss came into Robertson Stadium. We had split the season between the Astrodome and Robertson Stadium. Played a couple of games, and this is Robertson, like the first year we came back after years and years. I mean, an absolute dump. And we beat Southern Miss in overtime. It was Antoine Smith and Chuck Clemens' team. I want to say somewhere in the range of 56-49, something like that. There was defense optional game, and we had won, I believe, the first ever Conference USA football championship. So for a young broadcaster working with a legend that I watched in all those college teams as my partner, calling the game and then going on to the Liberty Bowl a few weeks later to play Donovan McNabb in Syracuse was an absolute thrill for a young broadcaster doing college football for the very first time. So I'll never forget how bad a game it was, how great a sightline it was to call a game at Robertson, but the facility was just wasn't ready for 1A football probably back in the 60s, and certainly wasn't good in 1996.
That's right. Dave asked a question that I'm just going to table once the season starts. If allowed 50% capacity, how will tickets, particularly season ticket holders, be handled? They're working on that right now. I've had conversations. I can answer this one with Chris Pesman. I don't know if you noticed, the University of Memphis came out today with an announcement. They'll only be allowing season ticket holders into their home games, but you can buy a season ticket up to June 30th, which I thought was an interesting strategy. So I don't know if we'll be taking that. So, Dave, we're going to have to table that one because I don't want to get crushed tomorrow in the office by saying something that could change in a week. So we're going to hold off on that. I will tell you that our athletic department and our university is doing everything it possibly can to allow every fan that can possibly come to the game to do so in a safe and responsible way. So there's still more to be said about that. I was going to say, asking University of Houston questions, and I'll start with Bill. We had Otis on. He's not an underrated Cougar, under the radar Cougar, but I'll ask all three of you. Give us an under the radar Cougar historically that was one of your favorites to watch play. Just someone that may not have had their number retired and may not have won the Heisman Trophy, but was there some person that you just gravitated to? You know, we talked about Don Chaney earlier, Bill, but it just doesn't quite get the love that they should have gotten over time.
You mean in basketball?
Any sport.
Well, I'll give one right off from a couple of years ago. Galen Robinson, to me, was probably as underrated a basketball player. You look at his numbers, you never know, but for 3 years, he led the Cougars as a point guard. And Kelvin will tell you that he was probably as valuable as any player he's had while he was at the University of Houston. But I can go back and talk about Paul Gibson, who was a great running back in the 60s. And Danny Davis doesn't get a lot of mention. Of course, Andre Ware won the Heisman Trophy, and of course that's the greatest thing you can do in college football as an offensive player. But Danny Davis led the Cougars into the Southwest Conference in 1976, and he led them to 2 straight conference championships and 2 straight Cotton Bowls.
Yeah.
And that win over Nebraska the first year with Tom Osborne and that group put the U of H definitely on the map.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have one? I'm going to go to Matt, then Robert.
I'll go 3. As a kid, I loved Phi Slamma Jamma. I still weep openly when it's on ESPN Classic or any channel. I even teased Jim Nantz when he was on my show a few weeks ago. I said, tell CBS thanks for rebroadcasting that game for the 8 millionth time. Clyde and Akeem obviously were the stars of that team, but I love me some Larry Mishaw. I loved Reed Geddes. I loved Benny Anders. So anybody associated with that team would really be guys. Michael Young clearly would be, in that group of guys that I just loved watching because I was a kid. That's the first time I really fell in love with college basketball was watching Phi Slamma Jamma.
Fantastic. Robert?
I'll go to that and stay with that Andre Ware, those teams there. I love Chuck Weatherspoon. He was so unique. Ted, it was like he looked like he was like a bowling ball that, just running down the field, and he could catch the ball. He was a hard runner. And I loved how the back of his uniform, it said C Spoon. They didn't even have Weatherspoon. It just said C Spoon. And I thought that he was just a dynamic player.
Yeah, those are all some great ones. I do want to slip one thing in here that Bill Worrell, am I mistaken that Bill Worrell played in the 1968 College World Series or was on that team? Is that correct, Bill?
I was on that team. I didn't go to the World Series, but I was on that team. I had only a half a semester left of eligibility, so I got to play the first part of the season. I didn't get the goodies at the end. We did have to go to Austin to play the best 2 out of 3 against the University of Texas, and that was Bibb Falk's final series and final game. And when the Cougars beat them 4-3 to go to the College World Series, Bibb unfortunately lost his last game as a college baseball coach.
Wow. And
Levette Hill was the manager, and he's probably – no one talks, the Cougars have had so many great coaches, starting with Bill Yeoman and Guy Lewis and Dave Williams, and you just go down the list. But Levette Hill got the Cougars to the College World Series, and a lot of people didn't realize what a good baseball coach he was.
Yeah, it's something else. So I'll ask Matt this question, a question from Rachel asking do you think these media days that used to occur in person, it could also happen in MLB at the beginning of the year and maybe the NBA as well, but this virtual world that we've gone into, do you see that, all 3 of you, what do you see lingering on as the new normal in this space in what you do on a day-to-day basis? What do you think will continue in the virtual space?
Well, I think it's going to make it more difficult for, sports information directors, PR people, because, people can't get to it Wi-Fi or they can't get to an area. You're not going to be able to have intimate conversations. I know Joseph Duarte is on this chat with us here today. And, if Joseph wants to have a good conversation with a player, he's doing a feature story, it's going to be more difficult. Will there be more access to the general fan? Absolutely, especially if you get players that want to reach out and you do it in a safe space like this. But I think for the behind-the-scenes stories, the good interviews that, I think radio will be certainly affected by it. I don't know how, Robert, how they're doing it at MLB Network, but I know for us, we only do phone interviews anyway. But I would say the behind-the-scenes stuff, the feature articles, the pieces that you would see in a newspaper or in an online are going to be a little more difficult because of the fact that guys just can't have that one-on-one conversation, which a lot of times in our business, you build relationships off of face-to-face, not off of a Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
Robert, how is it
I
affecting
think to Matt's point, I think also until significant progress has been made, maybe a vaccine or, just really having the virus under control. I don't see a scenario in which you can have a whole bunch of media in a post-game locker room. I just, it's going to be interview room, one guy at a podium, 6 feet apart, social distancing. I think that's going to be the norm for the foreseeable future until, like I said, maybe there's a vaccine or they've really have a good handle on the virus.
Now, Bill, you mentioned earlier to me when we were doing our production meeting that you would actually be here when the teams were playing in Orlando, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be in Toyota Center. We're going to set up our own broadcast facility, have all of the people involved in doing the telecast who would be doing it if we were doing a live telecast, and we'll get a clean feed from Orlando, and we'll just broadcast over it. Now, the interesting thing is, are they going to have microphones on the court level? Because if they do, they're going to get some colorful language during that game by the players. And since there is no crowd, you're going to get an R-rated broadcast. That's just the way it is. And so I don't see what they're going to do about crowd noise either, because that's going to be awfully difficult to pipe that in. So we're just going to have to kind of take it as it comes, see what we do, watch our voice inflections. And because this is all kind of new to me, I'm Captain Zoom. I have no idea what a Zoom was until you called me a couple of weeks ago. And I'm the only broadcaster left that says the player telegraphed a pass. Nobody knows what telegraph was. I mean, you got to go back to the 1800s. So it's really weird for me. I'm trying to learn and trying to stay up, but it's an interesting medium now. Be curious to see what happens.
Well, I can tell you in this space, you are beloved, Mr. Worrell. I know we joke around. You are absolutely beloved. And for those of you who don't know, Bill Worrell is the Distinguished Alumni Award winner on this call. It only took us 2 last-second shots by the Rockets and 1 unbelievable playoff run at the end to finally, in the 4th try, get Bill his award, because you have to. We do it in person. Robert knows this as well. And so literally one time, Bill, remember you were going to be coming on Saturday if the Rockets weren't going to make the playoffs, and then they made a last-second shot and Utah lost, and they made it. He called and said, "You're not going to believe this. It's just, I'm not going to be able to make it." And then it got pushed back. But I want to honor you and remind everybody that you're on that list of less than 300 people in the history of the university that's a distinguished alum, and we're really honored that you're here with us tonight. Truly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so I have one more question. We have about 8 minutes, and there might be one after that, but I want to make sure I get this one in. We had a question from one of our younger viewers about how do you get started in this business, or if you were going to give some advice to a student now working his way into the radio TV space, what's that path look like right now? Maybe Robert, you want to go first?
Yeah, it is such a the business is constantly changing, and Bill talked about having to get acquainted with Zoom meetings and remote things. I mean, if you would have told me at the start of 2020 that the most of the shows I'd be doing from my office, and we'd be doing it with something called a Zoom meeting. So it is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. I think young people right now, they're already miles ahead of us when it comes to technology. So that's not really a problem. I will say, try to find a way to get reps, to get in front of a camera, to get behind a microphone, to call an event, even if it's just practicing on your own. You have to just hustle. You have to grind. There's a whole lot of, there's more platforms. I mean, everyone can get on YouTube and do something, or just about anyone can do a podcast. So, it's just trying to find a way to be yourself, be natural, and be true to yourself. Don't try to be someone else. You can look at others and look to see how others have done it, but ultimately, to be successful, you have to be yourself and be authentic to yourself, because that, I think, is what will resonate the most with the audience.
Matt, you want to take a run at that one?
On the radio side, as a talk show host, I tell anybody that comes by, and we were doing a lot of tours at our radio station before the pandemic, is starting their own podcast. First of all, it's free. Second of all, it's easy. And third, you can make your mistakes. You know, I had a young man come in a few months ago who was a Memorial High School student, and he's like, well, what should I do? I said, well, frankly, if you talk about the Astros, Rockets, and Texans, that's a dime a dozen. Do a Memorial High School athletics webcast or a podcast. Narrow it down and talk about what you know about. Secondly, I said, be prepared to talk for 14 minutes without talking to anybody else, because that's what talk radio is. You know, I love caller interaction on my radio show, but frankly, I don't get a lot of it right now because there's nothing to talk about. So there's a lot of time that I'm on the air basically giving monologues, trying to engage folks. But, you know, social media, you know, people will send me questions on Twitter and whatnot, but there's a lot of times you just talk to yourself. So be able to have a conversation, be entertaining, make sense, and do it for a long period of time. As far as play-by-play is concerned, and Bill will certainly speak to this, just doing games over and over and over again. I have had this time while not doing any Rockets games since March to listen to some of my stuff, and it's very difficult. I don't like hearing the sound of my voice. I don't like hearing myself call a game, but I catch things when I listen to things and go, well, Matt, why did you repeat that? Or why did you say that? Or did you give the score enough? So I would say get in front of a television when live games resume at your high school, or your, you know, go over to the Fertitta Center, call a game into your phone and just make a bunch of mistakes and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until you think, hey, I got this down.
Bill, you want to take a seasoned veteran shot at giving some?
Well, those were great points. Those were great points. The only thing I would add to it is learn how to write. I find that if you can improve your reporting skills, take the newspaper when it comes out, or if you don't take a newspaper anymore, see, there I am going back to the Telegraph again, but get a newspaper and read a story, or, you know, go on the web or whatever you do, condense it, break it down, because when you talk to people on radio and television, you don't get to use a lot of commas. You have to talk one-on-one. It's like there's only one person watching you. And don't limit yourself to play-by-play and the color broadcast. You might want to be a technician. You might have producer skills. You might be a good director. You might find that once you get into the business that you like to light a set or do the audio. So just get into the business, learn as much as you can. If you can get on a crew, you know, there are a couple of broadcasters that now work at TNT. Brian
Anderson.
Huh?
Brian Anderson.
Yeah, he started that way. He started on the technical side and then moved over to the play-by-play side. And so Brian and I have had this discussion before. So any way you can get your foot into the door, do it.
So we have just 2 minutes left, and I'm going to ask you, when you get asked about the University of Houston and what it means to you and your experience at the University of Houston as to where you are now, what is your 30-second, 45-second elevator speech that you tell someone about the University of Houston that you pridefully say when they say, tell me about the University of Houston, what does it mean? So I'll start with Robert.
Well, first of all, I mean, look, I grew up in Houston, so it was an easy choice for me. You know, I got accepted at other schools, but University of Houston is where I wanted to be because I love the city so much. And the other thing I say is that it's a great university. It has done great things, but I still feel like it hasn't reached its full potential. And I don't mean that just athletically, but I mean that academically. I think that there is so much growth for that university, for that campus. I mean, I was there a couple of years ago, and just to see the transformation, it's remarkable. I mean, Houston is a great city, and the University of Houston is a great school, and they just go hand in hand with one another. And I really believe this, that the best is yet to come. There is so much that this school and this university is capable of, that I just can't wait to see what happens next.
Matt, how about you?
I was 19 years old when I got in the radio business, and very easily could have just given up on college and just worked my way through radio. But it was very important to me and to my family to get a degree. And so to be able to work in radio in Houston, Texas at a young age, and be able to go to a great school where I eventually got into some radio television classes and honed my skills. And oh, by the way, I met this beautiful woman named Kimberly, who I married in 1997. We're still married to this day. So I give the school a lot of kudos for that. A sense of engagement with fellow alums. I'm always envious of how Syracuse grads always get a lot of run. I got news for you. The University of Houston's got some talented broadcasters. The man on the screen here with Bill Worrell, Robert obviously representing our national, Jim Nance. I try to do a little bit on the local side. So I use it as a, I worked in the business, but a degree was very important to me. And not only did I get it, but I got it from a school that's got a great reputation, now Tier 1. I'm very proud. I think I boast about the University of Houston more on radio than anybody else probably in America. And I will continue to do so because I had such a great time there, being able to work in the business and be able to complete my degree. Granted, it was in 8 years.
And likely it started with the last guy I'm going to call on. And Matt stole a little bit of my thunder, Bill, that, you know this, 2 out of every 3 anchors on television in Houston are Cougars. Our strength in our radio television program is as strong as it gets. And you're probably the icon that these guys look to when they're trying to be in this space. And so I'm leaving the last word to you, Bill Worrell, about the University of Houston and what it means.
Well, everything I have right now, I owe to the University of Houston. I'll tell you why. I came from a segregated high school. When I started at the U of H, it was segregated. It didn't start the integration process until 1963 up to 64. I didn't have a lot of interactions with African Americans. It was my first chance as a young man to go side by side with Don Chaney and Elvin Hayes, Otis Birdsong, all of these great athletes, and other students, Mickey Leland, who later became a city councilman here in Houston. There were just a lot of opportunities for me to grow up as a young man and learn about diversity and how to treat the people from another race. We went through the marches together. We went through the civil rights and the Vietnam War protests. We went through all of that. And here I am 52 years later, and it's happening all over again. So I would say to each of us, the University of Houston gave me a chance to learn and meet people not of my race, learn how to get along with people of all ethnic persuasions. It meant the world to me, and it's everything. It set the foundation for me.
And every good broadcaster will tell you, Mike, don't mess up a good ending. And that's a good ending. So thank you all so much for being here. Bill, Robert, Matt, your blessings to our university. We thank you so much for taking your time out tonight and giving us some extra time. Those of you who joined us, thank you. We will be recording this. We usually get as many people watching it later as watched it early on. So we'll do this again, right? It'll be fun when we actually have games and results. We'll do it again, and we'll add some other folks. But thank you all so much. Thanks for everybody who joined us. On behalf of the University of Houston and our entire group, we want to wish you all good luck, stay safe, and go Cougs. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Mike.
So cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.